Morning. My name is Bill Degnan, New Hampshire State Fire Marshal. We're here conducting the investigation of the collapse of the circus tent, which occurred late yesterday afternoon. The incident occurred at approximately 5:46 p.m. Yesterday afternoon, when a severe storm came through with 60-mile-per-hour winds, according to the National Weather Service. The National Weather Service also advised that they had put out a severe thunderstorm warning for this region at approximately 5:23 p.m. The incident occurred in the Walker Brothers International Circus tent, and they're located out of Sarasota, Florida. This was the 5:30 p.m. show that was ongoing at the time of the incident. There was approximately 100 people in the tent at the time of the collapse. And we have reports that there were approximately 32 people that have been treated at 4 regional hospitals in the area. That information is still trickling in as we confirm with the hospitals how many people were treated as they sort through some of the people who were transported by ambulance and some that walked into the hospitals. Unfortunately, there was a father and daughter that perished in this incident, and their names are being withheld at this time pending the notification of next of kin. There are autopsies being performed as we speak to determine the cause of death. The investigation will involve the documentation of the scene, which includes mapping out the scene as to exactly where things are located after the collapse, and examining the actual setup of the tent to determine how it was set up in all the cables, where they were connected, and things of that nature. We'll also be conducting a building code and fire code assessment to ensure that everything was done according with nationally recognized building and fire codes. The Fire Chief Randy Flynn and Police Chief Bill Colburn commended all of the first responders and the people who were in attendance at this circus last night, as most everybody played a role in helping get some of the people that were trapped in the tent out. It's certainly something that is very disastrous, not only to the local community and the families that are involved, but when you look at it from the standpoint of a child and the child's father that lost their life, his family that is being disrupted forever. I don't have any other information in regards to the scene to be able to offer you at this time. Once we get going on our investigation, I'll have a better idea of what time this afternoon we'll have an update for you. So, and within the next half hour, I'll get that word out through Mike Todd, the PIO for the Department of Safety, so that you'll have that and know when we'll be able to offer something else up. I can take a few questions.
Sir, if there was a severe thunderstorm warning, why was the show going on?
That's an excellent question. It's really the responsibility of the show to monitor the conditions, and we don't know why they were going on at that time and what they knew.
Are these tents rated for certain weather conditions?
And that's what the investigation will look at. It will look at the manufacturer's specifications for the tent, which will include the wind loading.
So ultimately, you're saying it's the operator's decision whether or not to cancel the show because of weather. There's not a state or county oversight.
There was no state or local officials involved with this setup.
Sir, they had 17 minutes prior to the warning and the actual incident. Is that, I mean, that's an alarming amount of time. Is that warranting any possible charges or things along those lines?
The investigation is a fact-finding mission, and at this time there's no indication that there'll be any kind of charges.
Sir, have you spoken to representatives of Walker Brothers?
Are any of their injuries serious?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
How are the wounded victims doing? Are any of their injuries serious?
There are some serious injuries, but we haven't got the updates this morning. We're trying to get those in.
Sir, have you spoken to representatives from Walker Brothers?
Beg your pardon?
Have you spoken to the representatives of the operator?
We have.
And what are they saying?
At this time, they're waiting for counsel.
They're waiting for counsel.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how many emergency workers were on scene, the EMS people?
I don't have a count of them yet. The fire chief and police chief are going to be getting that information to us this morning.
How many are still in hospital?
We don't have that information either.
Do you know if that tent was ever inspected after it was put up?
Beg your pardon?
Do you know if the tent was ever inspected after it was put up?
To the best of our knowledge, there was no inspection done by any local or state official. I can tell you that there was no state official, and I believe that the locals did not inspect it as well. There was no request made to them for any inspection.
Is an inspection required before something like this?
There is a place of assembly permit required, and we're tracking that down at this time, but to the best of our knowledge, no request was made to the local fire official for that.
Did the fairgrounds have any requirements of their own outside of state parameters?
We have not looked at the contract with the fairgrounds at this time.
Is the local fire department required to do an inspection before they issue a certificate or to issue a certificate?
If they had been contacted about the setup, they would have done an inspection.
Should they have done it on their own initiative? Were they required to do it? There's no secret that there was a circus here.
I don't know that they knew or did not know that they were here. I can't confirm that.
Should they have inspected it?
I don't know if they knew or should have known. You know, that's something I don't know. You know, the investigation will tell us whether or not there was any indication that, you know, they knew. But as far as I know, they did not know anything about this.
As far as people who were hurt, were they mostly spectators, or any of them performers or members of the company that runs this event?
What we were advised that they were all spectators.
Representatives of the National Weather Service are on their way. Can you talk about what you're looking for from them as far as information?
The National Weather Service will help us in determining any indications in regards to the wind, what type of wind, you know, effect was it, shear. I don't believe it was a tornado because of what we're seeing doesn't look like that manner, but they're the experts on that, so that's why we've asked them for their help. We'll also be taking some aerial photographs of the area, and if there was any tree damage in the immediate area, we'll be able to see that, and that will help them in determining what type of wind event occurred. It's all part of the fact finding, so we can put the puzzle together with what we see for remains of the tent and the, you know, connect that with the wind event.
Are they coming from Gray?
Yes.
Is this circus a regular visitor to New Hampshire? Has your office ever encountered them before?
This circus has been through the state in the past years.
But no past incidents?
None that I'm aware of.
What was the capacity of the tent? Was it a full house?
We don't have those calculations. That'll be part of our investigation, is to calculate what the capacity was. But looking just at the stands that are there, 100 people in there would not be a full house.
You said you weren't aware of the fire department actually knew that this was here, but under state law, is a inspection required and a permit be issued, generally speaking?
If they were notified, they would have done an inspection. And
Is it
yes,
required?
yes, it is.
State
If
law.
they were notified, they would have done an inspection. So I thank you very much. We'll keep you updated.